Generally speaking, I try not to be too much of an alarmist. However, Trudeau's budget could literally be annihilating Canada as we know it. Some of the numbers that were brought out during this budget were so staggering that I think people don't realize how big they actually are. Sometimes you're too distracted on just trying to make ends meet because cost of living is getting so crazy in Canada right now. It's hard to pay attention to these large numbers, this deficit spending, everything that's being thrown around. Luckily, in today's video, we're going to be able to talk about it, but the way that they talk about the numbers in this video is so infuriating. I might get a little worked up because it's crazy to hear them say it like it's nothing, it's no problem, and it's not something that we should be worried about. Let's get into today's video and see what they have to say about it.
The federal government is billing this budget as much needed support for younger Canadians, with the focus overwhelmingly on housing and affordability. And here is how some people see the new measures.
The irony that it's being focused on young Canadians because of housing measures, because of all these things, it's like the worst doublespeak ever, because the people who are going to have to pay for this and will be around to deal with this in the future are the young people he's buying the votes from. And it's so frustrating to know that he's buying votes through these programs that are going to be destroying Canada's future and their future, like these young Canadians. So hearing that, this is the budget for young Canadians that we're going to destroy your future with. I'm already heated. Gotta calm down.
It is obviously appealing, but they have been saying that for the past couple of years, and it just seems like it's getting worse.
We need to afford tuition and rent and groceries and everything here, then it's kind of challenging.
Housing is difficult as well, but you know, people can share and stuff like that. But food, I mean, that's just, everybody deserves food.
The big numbers. The budget features nearly $53 billion in new spending over 5 years. And to help pay for the promises, the Liberals are raising taxes.
$53 billion in new spending over 5 years, okay? Trudeau's deficit has already doubled Canada's total deficit since he's been Prime Minister. So for the entirety of Canada, we had a deficit. Trudeau took over. He doubled that amount of time. He doubled that amount of deficit in 9 years. In 9 years, not even, 8.5 years, whatever it is. He doubled the entire history of Canada's budget in his term so far. And now they're going to increase the spending.
Is on the richest Canadians. That will bring in more than $19 billion in new revenue. The finance minister is still projecting to remain within her guardrail. She has a $40 billion deficit in this fiscal year as part of the budget. Now, Janice McGregor joins us.
See, this again, I'm worked up. Sorry, guys. This is the part that's crazy. She has a $40 billion deficit built into the budget. What does that mean? How can you build a budget around a $40 billion deficit? That's not a budget then. All you're doing is building a spending plan, not a budget. Because could you imagine having a conversation with your husband, your wife, whatever, and your boyfriend, girlfriend, and you go, hey, let's figure out our household budget for the year. I'm going to budget in for this year a minus $40,000 deficit for our household. That's part of our budget for the year. No, that's not how a budget works. This is a spending program, and because all they understand is taxes and spending. This one is particularly frustrating.
Us now to look ahead to what we'll hear today. The Prime Minister speaking to caucus at 10 a.m. Eastern, as I mentioned. What will he be laying out there in terms of, again, reiterating the strategic choices the government made?
Heather, yesterday, obviously, it was the Finance Minister, Chrystia Freeland's job to give us all the numbers.
Spending Minister.
Today, it's the Prime Minister's job to make sure we get the point of what this budget was intended to really be about. You see all the younger, diverse faces on the cover here, the talk of fairness for every generation. They need to make
the futures that we're throwing away, the fairness that we're going to have when, Trudeau's long gone and all of this damage is still around.
Sure that gets traction now. This government is seen to be solving the problems most on people's minds. And this is a map for how the Liberals are hoping to use the last.
Cost of living is absolutely deteriorating in Canada. It's getting worse and worse. Of course, everything's getting more expensive, but it's not because the government is not giving us enough free stuff. That doesn't make sense from a country perspective, that people are getting more poor because the government is not giving them more free things. I want every child to have all the food that they need. But when you see this $1 billion school food program, yes, of course, there's people who need access to food, and I want the kids to have food. But why can the kids not afford food? It's because the wealth that's being sucked out of Canada, the punishment that we're going through as a country, it's nuts. We are getting all of this spending, like the carbon tax, like all of inflation's going crazy because these tax increases, because of these punishing programs that Trudeau has in place, like everything. Oh, carbon tax is destroying food costs, all these things that could easily be fixed. Cut the carbon tax, get rid of freaking crazy immigration, allow us to focus on resources. Don't, stifle all of our innovation and growth because these stupid, oh man.
Year or so maybe that remains in this parliament before the next election. Really, this budget, their last chance to have enough sort of runway to implement things.
500 million on a fund for youth mental health. Why are the youth struggling with their mental health? Maybe is it because the future is looking more and more bleak because of how our government's being run right now? Like, Canada didn't have a mental health problem 30 years ago with the youth. What's changed? Oh, our country's being run into the frickin' sewer.
Before they take it to the voters for their verdict. That's why I think, even though federal departments and agencies found
19 billion in new revenue. Okay, so we have a 40 billion deficit with 19 billion in new revenue. So what's going on with the spending if this is supposedly new revenue? Guess who this is going to stop? Small business owners, and I understand they're going to try and spin it that it's only the ultra rich who pay this. But the same, plumbing contractor who starts a plumbing company at 20 years old or whatever, and he grows that company over time, and then he sells that company eventually, he's going to pay the capital gains tax on that. The corporation will. There's all, like, when he sells the business. So now it's not just, why would you take the time to start a new business if your intention is to sell it later on, knowing like, okay, well, I'm just going to get punished for starting a business. You may as well just be an employee, may as well just suck off the government teat, which is what they want. They just want more people reliant on the government.
Found over $15 billion that they could cut in recent months. And even though the size of the federal government is going to shrink by about 5.
Yeah, they found $15 billion to cut. They're going to stop paving roads, they're going to stop our infrastructure, fixing bridges, all these things. And it's like, okay, sure. I mean, this is crazy.
1,000 positions in the coming years. This deficit isn't really going anywhere. Roughly projected
cost of servicing debt $2 billion more than it was projected. Not $2 billion total. Our debt servicing cost is $54 billion just in debt from Justin's debt, which is crazy. So yeah, that's going to continue to go, and that's the way that financing works, which is why, one of the arguments for why they need to cut rates is because this government spending is crazy. So when it comes to cutting rates, like, people don't realize, like, we think about it from mortgages perspective. So I'm a real estate agent in Ontario. If you want to work with me or anybody in my network in Ontario, reach out to me in the link below, or anybody across Canada. I do have a network who can help you out. But the reason that people have conversations about the rate cuts all the time is our sovereign debt is so bad. So when people think about, households dealing with interest rates, this government debt is subject to those same interest rates. So people don't understand that, and they forget. And it's like, that's a big reason why the cuts discussion happens.
In the short term to stick to about the same size as what we've been seeing this year. All those billions were instead redirected into things like that affordable housing strategy that the Liberals have been selling for the last couple of weeks. Also, financing to
affordable housing outside of lowering immigration, decreasing demand. We're going to outbuild it. 4 million houses. It's never been done in the history of Canada, but Trudeau's government's going to do it.
help some of those students in your pack there who are doubly pinched with high tuition and high rent in the cities where they're studying. Investments also to improve the quality of life for Indigenous peoples. That is what we are expecting the Assembly of First Nations National Chief to be talking about today, as well as the long-awaited disability benefit. Boy, we have talked about this for a long time. They are finally getting to doing it in this budget, but not to the extent of the financial help that advocates said were required for that group of vulnerable Canadians. The big move on the revenue side of this budget, the changes to how capital gains are going to be taxed when investment assets are sold, that arguably targets a very small slice of voters that can afford to pay, but it's also
Classic. No, it's just a small little slice of the voters. Yeah, it's not like they're going to try and start their corporations in the US or somewhere else now. You know, you've heard about it a lot in the software and the tech space. They're going, oh, well, we're just going to start our business in America then, instead of doing it because in that space, often, you know, that the plan of the sale of the business makes the most amount of sense for these people. So they're like, yeah, why would I innovate in Canada when I can go do that down in the States?
Precisely those people that the economy needs to keep investing in Canada and help address Canada's business productivity issues. We'll see how this plays out, if there's as much of a push after the budget as there was before the budget to drive.
There's always ways to avoid the taxes in some capacity, whether it's moving the company to somewhere else or whatever. But the fact is, they never collect what they say they're going to collect, and they always spend more than they say they're going to spend, or than they said they're going to spend. So it's like our spending will be higher and our collection will be lower. Yeah, I'm sure that won't impact the deficit at all.
These messages home, but I noticed the official opposition didn't even engage with the pros or cons of any of these policies. Pierre Poilievre simply saying it's time for the Liberals to stop and we need an election.
Mr. Speaker, here we have today a ninth consecutive deficit, with the budget still not balancing itself. And everything on which the Prime Minister spends gets worse and more costly. He is spent, and Canadians are broke. The country is broken.
Pierre Poilievre calling for an election to fix the broken country as he sees it. And if the Liberals don't get NDP support, that could very well happen.
It would be nice for him to get specific on the budget stuff. I mean, again, Pierre, we want him to win, obviously, because he's the only hope at this point. Not that there's a huge hope, but he's got to start talking more about immigration too. He's being way too flippant about a lot of these things.
What are we hearing from Jagmeet Singh today?
Yeah, I was curious yesterday, Heather. He didn't seem to want to confirm that this budget necessarily or automatically had his party's support. He criticized the Liberals for not doing more on specific things the New Democrats had called for, like targeting the windfall profits of grocery, telecom, oil companies the way they had demanded. Listen to sort of how he was explaining things in the foyer.
Want to hear what the plan is. How is a Prime Minister going to guarantee that there's not massive cuts to services for Canadians with the cutting of 5,000 employees? How is he going to justify to people living with disabilities that $200 a month is enough to meet their needs? I need to hear a plan on that before we make a decision.
What is Jagmeet doing? What's his purpose anymore? The guy's spending his ideas. He offers nothing. He's the worst. He shouldn't be their party leader anymore. He sucks. Bring in somebody who could do something. I mean, the NDP's the worst, but he at least could do something if he was... bring in somebody who could do something, because all this guy is doing right now is propping up Trudeau's government and then being like, yeah, I don't know what's going on. I just want to keep spending my own money for what... he enjoys being the party leader because he gets unlimited free stuff. He's getting bought out. Everybody knows the allegations that he's staying party leader and just trying to push the election so that he can get his lifelong pension, because he's about to get the pension timelines. So it's just seeing him there, not say anything, not add anything. Well, we're just going to figure it out. I need to know, corporate profits. It's dude, all you want to do is tax and give out free stuff too. But then you don't even disagree with Trudeau. You're just there to support it all. Whatever.
Really see the government fall over those kind of concerns? Bloc Québécois leader Yves-François Blanchet was really calling this out as maybe a negotiating tactic that doesn't have teeth to back it up.
At the end of every episode of a series on Netflix, they say, in the next part of this show, this is what will happen. We already know what will happen. Mr. Singh will come here and find an explanation for his keeping supporting the Liberals.
That guy's a French nationalist, and he would align way more politically with the Conservatives, but for some reason, they never, like, offer any support. They're always, like, just trying to... I think it's just because they see that the Conservatives are clearly the next ones, and they want to be opposition to them. I don't know what's going on, but, like, everything that they do, like, especially when you look into, like, the politics of Quebec, like, they are so strict on their immigrants, like, they have language laws, like, they have all these things, and, like, they're so much more nationalistic than we are, but then for some reason, anyways.
Look, Heather, all the parties are seeing the same public opinion polls that we are. The Liberals want this budget to be the beginning of their comeback story. But if that's not where things are heading, New Democrats perhaps a little worried about going down with the government that they've been propping up.
Which makes sense. He's a fence rider. He actually doesn't stand for anything. Talk about Jagmeet here. So thanks so much for watching and listening to my yelling. Like and subscribe. Don't forget I'm a real estate agent. If you want to work with me or anybody in my network across the country, reach out to me in the link below. Try and have a great rest of your day.